Hi there. Hi guys. It's Celine. Today is Friday, the 4th of September. Yay for that, because the weather's a bit cooler and a bit more wind and rain and occasionally that kind of thing. The air is moving. And I had to me at least, a new idea. I've been wrestling quite a bit, actually all summer long, with all sorts of situations where something kind of accidentally happened and there was a conflict between people where I didn't necessarily want things to be, difficult. What with, for example, my neighbors, there was something else going on with our rental car, which I won't go into any details because I don't think it's all that fascinating. What I'm going for here is that I have felt responsible, overly responsible. You could say guilty, even though it isn't really exactly, it doesn't really feel like exactly like guilt, although maybe I'm nitpicking here. Let's just call it feeling guilty over things that I haven't really caused. I actually dreamed about something similar really early this morning for quite a long time. And I woke up from that going like, why am I dreaming about all sorts of plumbing situations in a house that wasn't ours, where stuff was broken and the actual water was coming out of the oven in my dream. You know how dreams can sometimes actually be kind of funny. It wasn't really funny. It wasn't particularly extremely stressful. Nobody was really, shouting at us or at me, taking it out on me or any of it. It was just that I had this latent, constant sense of I'm responsible, but not really. Like you're seeing different things with left and right eye, almost. That's the thing. When you're really responsible, I mean, I put the book on the table. I did it. So if the book's in the way, it's my job to take the book away from the table if I don't want anybody to read what's in here. Or if something else needs to be done on the table and the book is in the way. I have a clear-cut sense of putting the book or the mug or the phone or making the vlog. I am doing the thing, ergo I'm responsible. There's a cause and effect, simply, and being responsible, being aware, being accountable is then being aware of being responsible, really. If you like, let's just define a couple of things here. What's bugging me is when I'm only partly responsible, or when we actually did something but we didn't know what was going to happen, or you're being held accountable for a situation, like with my neighbor, that wasn't completely explicit, so we couldn't know what it was that we were being held accountable for, which makes it impossible to deal. This is the kind of the friction where I'm willing to be responsible. This is the theme song of my life, is being held accountable to a way larger extent, to actually an extent that's damaging and crushing, for things that I may have been an agent of some sort in some context, and all this makes me so sick. I swear to you guys, I am sitting here talking to the world about I want you to know basically how much this makes you sick. This makes you mentally, emotionally, it screws you over like there's no tomorrow. And I have been wrestling with blaming my parents both of them or either of them. My grandparents blaming the Second World War and Adolf Hitler, trying to find somebody else to be responsible, basically. Responsible. Ooh, not accountable, because I can forget about that, most of it. Because most of the people who caused my present day discomfort are long gone. Most of them, or they're gone from my life anyway. I have spent the past 8 or 10 years or so extracting myself from situations where I could be confronted with this type of stuff again. I was going to call it the involuntary gaslighting that can go on, because to me it looks like it's like a big a conspiracy almost, except not really orchestrated or organized by any individual person. It's more like it's floating around. There's a constant, almost an industry of blame floating around that is creating a whole mass and layer of conflict and challenges, which are probably good for us because we need to be challenged in terms of accountability, humans. Wouldn't you agree that this is something we need to start to live up to? Boy, what with the state the planet's in and the climate and still using so much plastic. Why, there's too many of us, there's too many, you can have all sorts of ideas about that. But talking about, I am not comfortable assigning like a cause. How am I going to say this? I'm not really comfortable talking about things that you can't see, really. I am very much kind of a pragmatist, after all. I have a lot of vibration experience, with energies and crystals and stuff like that. I know that there is a lot more going on than meets the eye. But I still want all of us, each and every one of us, you and me, to be able to be responsible and accountable for our lives. I want us to be sovereign human beings. There's a nice word right there. So that we can distinguish for ourselves. That's the thing right there. I grew up in a situation, I don't know if you can still see, but I was snottering just now, because it's been bugging me for probably 2 months or so, on and off, depending on who I was talking to and what I was doing and whatever it was that I was engaged with. There's been stuff going on that has forced me to relive again and again being put in a situation where I was with my mother as an infant, really held accountable by her, actually gaslit, into a state of being accountable, the one that got shouted at, basically, for things that had nothing to do with me. And so I was supposed to be, there's like this deformed image of sovereignty going on. Certainly for my parents, both my parents, they had that clearly in their subconscious, I think, because neither of them really ever realized any of this. I can basically tell, sort of, from their birth charts, because their north node was in Aquarius. So the south node is in Leo, opposite right there, this is Leo. And that's where my sun is. Actually, it was fairly close. My sun was fairly close to their south node. I'm sure that didn't help. They made me be born at the time they did. Okay, so whatever. So there's a whole, I suppose for me, helpful trajectory going on from the responsibility, accountability kind of a mishmash going on at the one end, at the Leo end, this end right here, that you see here, towards the Aquarius end, which is about sovereignty, about being an individual, no matter what. Very interesting to me. In the process of dealing with these things and, encountering the things, what occurred to me is that you are born in a situation, if you are like me, if you have problems with feelings of guilt and anxiety, I would like you to consider the situation as you are a person, right? There's a person there. Completely regardless of everything around you, you are a person, independent of the things that you're born in. The thing you're born in contains this massive mechanism, I am supposing, of involuntary gaslighting. And there may be voluntary gaslighting going on, where a person has a particular truth in their minds and they're pushing that onto you the whole time. It may look like gaslighting. It may also not look like gaslighting at all. It may not even, you may have to look up gaslighting first and then think about this for 3 weeks before you go like, oh, hang on, if I look at it like that. The thing is, it's about perspectives. Very simply, very basically, I am supposed, as an individual, as a sovereign, theoretically, individual, I'm supposed to have my own perspective. I actually have my own perspective, whether I like it or not. Because I sit here in this body. This is not my mum's body. It is not my dad's body. It is not Adolf Hitler's body, thank God. It's not the body of Christ. It's not the body of whatever you want to imagine here. It is my personal body, my history, my mix of combinations of talents, of faults and weirdnesses and possibilities and whatever there is inside that just either comes out or doesn't, But it's a unique perspective. By definition, you're born in a body, ergo, there you go, starting off your own perspective. So, consciousness, right? It doesn't matter whether you're massively conscious and enlightened or whether you just traipse around doing the same thing on and on for 30 years. I don't care. It's your perspective. It's a unique, it can't be anything else. Obviously, right? So, in the gaslighting thing, what happens is that your perspective is you're supposed to interpret your goings on in your life, the things that happen to you. You're supposed to interact in situations with people consistently, more or less, you hope, or to change, to grow, to develop whatever's inside you, etc., etc. I'm talking about growing up here. During that period, you're supposed to, define your perspective in a way. I think of this in a very concrete manner. So whether you're a journal writer, for example, or not, whether that appeals to you or not, whether you're very sporty, whether you're somebody who loves physical work, all those kinds of things are what in the end defines you and your perspective. I'm not just talking about you here, I'm talking about your perspective as it belongs to you, right? So some people write poetry, others wouldn't know what to do with that. Some people trim trees for a living. Some people love to travel and have the constant itch of moving and, shopping around the planet the whole time because you just got to interact with the scenery and changes and love to move around. Other people can sit in their chair and talk to the camera for ages on end, like me. It's a very different, and I'm trying to also not be this about talents. It is about tastes and ideas and, tendencies toward this, that, or the other. And so all this, just past 10 minutes, what I'm trying to say is there's this perspective. The perspective was already there, whether you're aware of it or not. The perspective is there from before you were born, because it's your body. It's your consciousness. You're an individual vortex of light that's gotten into the body, incarnated, and from that moment on, you're stuck. You've got, on the other hand, a perspective, which is really neat. Then you're born, and you interact, and you go through the days and the years. And it turns out that the whole of society, and I mean the 100% whole, it looks like, of human existence, is about everybody more or less conforming in a million different ways to perspectives that aren't their own. There are a lot of people out there who know this idea, who know that this has been going on for quite a while. This is not my jam. I'm out of here. I'm going to do my own thing now. Whether they're maybe at age 14 or 16, they decide that for themselves. I'm done with this kind of stuff. My parents do this, that way, blah, blah, blah. And it's not my thing. And they extract themselves from that because they somehow or other have the inner security that they can stand on their own 2 feet. Their perspective can stand on its 2 feet. Just fine. And whatever life throws at them, it's okay. They deal. And they are flexible and they learn and they deal. And sometimes it means having a huge, massive emotional breakup with parents. And sometimes it doesn't. And they just get along fine. And they just have to be, they're aware of their separateness. I never was. And I think that's where the difference really lies. I was sort of absorbed into other people's perspectives, which is what I call the involuntary. I'm saying involuntary because it was much larger than what people chose to actively do, really. There were a couple of individual actions by my mother, by my father, by their parents before them, that were sort of important or very influential during a given period of time. In the 60s, there was this, that, and the other going on. In the 40s, there was this, that, and the other things going on. So what I'm saying by calling your attention to the involuntary gaslighting going on, I'm saying that actually the opposition between your own personal perspective and whatever is thrown at you, what makes you sick, basically, what can make you sick if you're like me, is much larger than one single individual. There's no point really in assigning the cause. I said this earlier this week or last week, what was it? That it isn't really useful to completely consider that one person is responsible, the actual organic cause of what's going on for you and on this end. It doesn't fit the bill. It doesn't ever fit the bill. We try to make it fit the bill, always. We try to, but it's never satisfactory, of course, because it just doesn't work that way. But the mechanism of being gaslit is still the same. The mechanism of feeling, in my case, guilty for 199 things where I did one thing wrong is insane making. It's sick making and crazy making, and you believe, because I was too young at the moment or in the period of time when I was an infant, where all this was imposed on me, when the massive amalgam, if you like, what looks to me as a mass of indistinct negative influences, like a large concrete lump. It was all being pushed over me and through my own perspective. My own perspective was destroyed, or so you would think. And it hurt every single day of my life. And this is the real reason why I am on YouTube talking here, doing my thing, because each time I talk about this kind of stuff, I pull it apart again, and it makes me feel a whole lot better. So I'm hoping that if it reaches one other person out there who goes like, oh yeah, I can see how this would be, how this would apply, or I can see how it would apply to somebody close to me. There you go. I'm just adding my 2 cents worth to this type of thinking process, where actually it is because because I am still here, my body didn't fall apart, but my consciousness, my psyche fell apart. I have spent a gazillion years in my impression, fighting depression, fighting anxiety, like endlessly. Over the past 2 months, I have been revisiting holes in my soul of anxiety and guilt that are so painful and so distressing and pointless, while you're inside, that I just had enough. Over the past week, I was going like, can we please end this constant yammering in my brain? I'm guilty. I'm responsible. I did this thing wrong. I'm causing other people to suffer. I am being crucified here by my own sense of guilt. And I have told myself over and over 14 times a day that it isn't what the other people in the equation, in this particular case, actually want me, because it never was. I have responded with this massive non-acceptance, I suppose, resistance of being forced into this position. Because I hate it, because I hate the concrete lump that's being pushed through my consciousness, pushed through my senses, pushed through my brain, the utter 100% denial of my own perspective. And for some idiotic reason, my own perspective still survives. It survives disintegration. It survives what do you call that? Dissociation, kind of. Dissociation is where you are so at a loss who you really are that you sort of flip out of your awareness. Apparently parks itself somewhere in the distance, weirdly. There's always a connection back to your body, but if I've always looked at myself in those types of circumstances as emotionally and in terms of consciousness, you really consist of in terms of a symbol, it is like being a locomotive with a couple of little cars behind it, carriages, like a train, and you need both the locomotive and the carriages to be together, to be in a proper sequence, and then everything starts chugging along happily. And you can do whatever it is you need to do. You can be active. You can feel more or less okay. You can still have pain, or you can still be miserable over certain things, or unhappy, or discontent, or whatever. But those aren't emotions that are really linked to a state of dissociation. When you're dissociated and depressed and overly anxious, like in a state where you'd normally go to a doctor for pills, which is something I've never done, because I don't trust that to give me a solution to my problem. I want to analyze my problem and find my own solution. That's why I'm here. That's why I do this kind of thing. it is like there's parts of you that aren't connected properly. And so you have to figure out how to reconnect yourself on the inside. And that can be really hard. And I think it's a very personal type of process where you have to. So you have to think about things. You have to figure out how that works for you. And I can't really tell you anything about that. But I can only tell you about what it was like for me. And over the past 5 years or so, I have done a lot of reintegrating bits and bobs of myself and connecting things inwardly somehow and also into my body, which feels loads better. I feel loads stronger. Practicing doing energy work, etc., also helps to, reconnect the bits, etc. But, and this is just another, line of thought in this whole bunch of lines of thought that you can find on my channel, really. So, but the notion really that I have, no matter what, I have my own perspective, and it's always been there, whether I was dissociated or not, really, whether I needed to do a soul retrieval or not, it doesn't matter really all that much. In the basis, I have to still be aware that I suffered because my own perspective, which is in here, which is me, right, was opposing the concrete wall that was being thrown at me day in, day out. And I have plenty good reasons for being very uncomfortable with all that, and with people who kind of apparently start this process for me all over again because they behave in ways that are very similar to the way my parents behaved, whichever, either one of those. And for me, this is helping. It turns out that as a conclusion to this whole story here, because I've done a lot of energy work, I've also, looked at how my belly works, how it feels in there, and in my heart area, there was a lot of energy work that needed to be done, and in my throat area, and so on and so forth. All that's been really helpful. But if you don't realize that there is such a thing as a personal perspective, no matter what, and that this is actually a mind thing, and it is in the mind that whether voluntary or involuntary, gaslighting takes place. That's a pure perspective thing going on right there. And it is because you do not know, because you're too small or too innocent or whatever it is, to realize that it is the very existence of your perspective that's being challenged all the time. This happens in society, in human society, all the flaming time. And it has happened wherever people have surrendered their identities to a massive cause because they were starving, or because they were powerless, because 100 reasons, because they couldn't send their kids to school, because they had ideas, or in each and every second of our lives is made up of involuntary gaslighting. That's what I think today. And there's a lot of it still around as it is today. We're never free of this, because I suppose it's easy, or it is where we come from. Saying the same things everybody else is saying. It's hard to say new things. I can only have my own, because I carry this millstone around my neck of this past, so I am kind of more or less forced to talk about these things. So, because if I didn't have the millstone, I'd be, off yonder having a coffee with somebody and just mindless and obeying the deformed truth that everybody's copying. I hope this scares you in a good way. I will make a separate video about my rune cards, because I'm back with my rune cards, and there's a set of perspectives there that is refreshingly free of recent past terrors, you know? So, I hope you're still okay over there, and thank you for watching. I was actually talking for half an hour, I think. Gosh. I think it's an important subject, and I'm not done, you know, with this, because I'm kind of really pleased to discover that there's a sort of an overall mechanism going on here that I am actually dealing with, or trying to deal with, in my own way. And by now, everything makes a lot more sense. So if it makes sense, then I can go forward from there. So on that note, I'm going to leave it for today. Have a nice weekend, and I'll be back on probably on Monday or Tuesday, or thereabouts. Okay? See you then, and hope you're all okay, you know? Ciao. Ciao for now.